It is not denying the fact that America emerged as the superpower after WW2. Since then, America has portrayed itself as the global savior, a defender of democracy and freedom. From Korea and Vietnam to Afghanistan, the so called Messiah of the world has rushed to so many countries to wage war, either to establish democracy or to curb international terrorism. But the mockery is that America lost almost all wars except one after WW2. Now the question arises why the superpower with the best economy and mighty war machinery faces setbacks and failures in the wars with Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, or Afghanistan. The iconic 1970 war movie pattern starts with the opening speech. Americans play to win all the time. That's why Americans have never lost and will never lose a war. Because the very thought of losing is hateful to Americans. Ironically, America's military is like Germany's in the 20th century, a tactically and operationally brilliant force that cannot think strategically. Before delving deep into the matter, let us discuss the definition of war. Today, war is not just an airstrike or deployment of ground forces against enemy. Rather, it's about achieving political goal, and US has been struggling to achieving that political goal since 1945. Prior to WW2, US has won almost all wars it fought. Those wars were mostly conventional types, overwhelmingly between US and other countries where US has always the upper hand. But today, 90% of the wars are against insurgent groups or civil wars. These types of conflicts are typical in nature, where different rebel groups with different ethnicity, culture, language, religion are fighting for different political aims, and US participation or intervention in the name of championing democracy or fighting terrorism faces a crisis of legitimacy for America. Now let us analyze how the US government has made it a practice to lose wars due to lack of proper political objectives in the post-WW2 era. First comes the Korean War, where the US sent troops to defend South Korea from North Korean aggression. But there was a sudden change in the US policy and overextension of goals to unify the entire peninsula under a pro-Western government, which provoked Chinese intervention. And China, with its crippled economy under the leadership of Mao Zedong, seized the opportunity to assert itself with the Chinese People's Volunteer Army, turning the war into a costly stalemate, leaving Korea divided, and the US failed to achieve the political goal. Next comes the Vietnam War, with 58,000 US casualties and with the expenditure of 828 billion US dollars. The US policymakers again underestimated the nationalist motivations of the Viet Cong and treated the war purely as a fight against communism. The US leaders lacked viable strategy to win the hearts and minds of the common Vietnamese people. As a result, the war escalated into a massive conflict without a clear plan for achieving political stability, resulting in a costly and humiliating withdrawal. In the Afghanistan war, there were 2,500 US casualties.
The United States military has begun strikes against Al Qaeda terrorist training camps and military.
And the result is that Ashraf Ghani, the US-backed Afghan president, had to flee, and Taliban's taking selfies behind his desk. The question then arises, what are the policy errors in Afghanistan? Initially aimed at dismantling Al Qaeda, the mission expanded to nation building, creating a democratic Afghanistan, which proved unsustainable. And it's Barack Obama who realized that Afghanistan is really a graveyard for foreigners, and he had no other options but to withdraw his troops, resulting in the swift return of Taliban to regain power.
In the world from grave danger.
The historic blunder in Iraq war was the inaccurate intelligence about weapons of mass destruction, undermining its legitimacy. The Bush administration and military advisors somehow wanted to justify invasion of Iraq by framing Saddam Hussein as a threat to global security. The US was able to remove Saddam but it also marginalized the Sunni elite, dismantling their military and government influence while empowering a Shiite administration. Moreover, raids on mosques, improper handling of the Quran, and disrespect of holy sites further inflamed religious sentiments and reached its catastrophic end with the rise of ISIS. US mistakes in Iraq and Afghanistan were the result of a pervasive failure to understand the historical framework within which insurgencies take place, to appreciate the cultural and political factors of other nations and peoples, and to understand warfare beyond the limited confines of tactics and operations. It's always easy to pass an order to invade any country or to wage war against any insurgent groups with any pretext sitting in the comfort of White House. Is not it funny how the loudest advocate of wars often had zero battlefield experience? Bill Clinton cleverly dodging the Vietnam War, or George W. Bush staying safe in the Texas National Guard. Biden cited asthma as his escape, but his athletic movements never say so. And Trump had bone experts who said his family physicians. But the so-called bone experts never seem to slow down his golf swing. The US has paid a heavy price for its recent military misadventures, but it's not too late to set the strategic goals of the US administration for the national security. The US administration and senior military leaders must think strategically, keeping in mind the mistakes done in Korea, Vietnam, Libya, Iraq, or Afghanistan.